Dr. Curran is the Associate Dean of Local Global Partnerships at the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers, the University of New Jersey. Dr. Curran is a faculty member in language, and her research focuses on issues related to language teacher and global education from critical perspective. She has published a journal such as TSOL Quarterly, the Journal for Teachers' Education and Theory into Practice. Dr. Curran was Fulbright English teacher specialist in Durango in 1991. Please help me give her a warm welcome by an applause.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Thank you, Lali, for that nice introduction. And I want to begin by thanking the ETC group having me here. Maestra Kay Duran Howard has been wonderful with her team in bringing me here today. So it's very nice to be here to talk to you about some of my favorite things. Our responsibility as educators to continue our lifelong development, and to do that through developing global competence as we become global citizens. And today I'm going to talk about how we do that, or how we can do that, through storytelling and in other ways. But I want to begin first by telling you a story. So, is this working? Let me tell you a story. I don't know if you caught from the introduction that I was here in Durango many, many years ago. Some of you know that, right? Raise your hand if you remember meeting me a long time ago. In 1991, I was here as a Fulbright English teaching specialist, and I was here for about a year and a half, and I had the most wonderful experience. I made wonderful friends, colleagues, friends for life. I learned so much about Mexico. I learned more Spanish. I learned about the culture. And I fell in love with this Mexican culture. And so it's been very important to me to stay connected with the UJED, with the language teaching field here in Mexico. Right now, I work at Rutgers, which is a state university in New Jersey. I'm the Associate Dean of Local Global Partnerships, and that means that one of my responsibilities is making connections with diverse international groups around the world and in the local community in New Jersey. And then I'm also a professor, a faculty member in language education. So I work preparing our English teachers and world language teachers who teach Spanish, Chinese, German, French, and other languages. So that's who I am, and that's a little bit about me. And here is a picture of me when I arrived here in Durango in 1991, many, many, many years ago, right? And you can see that I was very happy with that experience. It was fantastic. So I, as I said earlier, have a great amount of affection and cariño for Mexico. And I felt like I couldn't begin today's talk without talking about the situation in the United States and the relationship with Mexico right now. Actually, maybe I should go to this next slide first, because you know that many of us went to go protest about what's happening in the United States in terms of immigration, in terms of the relationships with Mexico. So we were there to say that love is what we're all about, and making connections. And when I was here in Durango so many years ago, many of you helped me grow as a global citizen and learn about strong ways we can be connected and help each other and work together. So I wanted to speak on behalf of those of us in the United States who care about you in Mexico and Latin America. And this picture here is in my town. We live in a little park, a town called Highland Park. This is a meeting we had the week before I came here, saying, what can we do to change this? What can we do in our little city to work to make this better, and to make people who are immigrants in our city, undocumented people who are living in the city, feel safe and comfortable and like they belong? So I just wanted you to all know that a lot of us are working towards that. At this meeting, some people stood up and they weren't so happy about this, and we know a lot of people voted for the president that we have right now. More of us voted not to have him president, so please remember that, yes. And I just want you to know we're working really hard, okay? So I began today's talk with a story because I really believe that stories are how we learn about each other, how we build relationships, and how we understand the world. So today we're going to tell a few stories together. Does that sound good? Yeah. So this is my plan for the session. By the end of the time that you're here with me, you should be able to answer these questions. Maybe you already have the answers now. But the first one is, what is a global citizen? And what does it mean to be globally competent? And why, for us, for language teachers, is storytelling such a powerful tool for us to use? And how can we use storytelling and other resources to develop global competence? Does that sound like a good plan? All right, that's what my plan is. So what do you think a global citizen is? That's the first question. Can you just throw out some words to me? Somebody who is a global citizen is what? Open-minded, traveler, speaks many languages, person who travels and takes their culture to another country, an avid learner, has a lot of tolerance. Great ideas. Those are all great and really what we're talking about today. Here's a definition of what a global citizen is. And I took this from the Global Peace Building Center. I like this definition very much. So it says, a global citizen is someone who identifies with being part of an emerging world community and whose actions contribute to building this community's values and practices. So let's look at that. Somebody who identifies with being part of an emerging world community. We belong to lots of communities. We have our family community, our local community, our city, our state. But if you're a global citizen, you're also thinking, in addition with all those communities, that you belong to this emerging global world community. It's developing, and we're all part of it, and we all make it happen. And we act to contribute to building the community's values and practices. Each of us does this no matter what. We're always acting. But what we need to do is be conscious that we're trying to build values and practices that make this world a better place. So that's the definition of a global citizen. And to be a global citizen, we need global competence. And English teachers, we talk about a lot about linguistic competence. We talk about cultural competence. We talk about intercultural competence. We heard that in some of the talks here. And today I'm talking about global competence. And what that is the capacity and the disposition to act on issues of global significance. All right, so we need the capacity and the disposition. Somebody before shouted out to have an open mind, to be tolerant. Those are dispositions. Those are perspectives, ways of believing, valuing, and thinking. And we also need the capacity. We need the skills to be able to do it. And we want to be looking at, working towards issues of global significance. And that means we need to know what they are. What are we acting towards and on? So if you have a camera with you, I'm happy to share these slides later, but this is a slide I would take a picture of if you're not familiar with this online book by Bosmanzia and Jackson. This is called Education for Global Competence, Preparing Our Youth to Investigate the World. And it's a wonderful online document, a PDF that you can download and access, and it will tell you all about what it means to be a global citizen and to be global competent. And it has wonderful rubrics at the end of it, so you could even look at what does it mean for us as teachers. I'm going to talk about it today, but I only have a little bit of time with you, so this is a really great resource if you want to take it with you for free and look at it later. So they say that there are 4 types of things to include for global competence. The first one is we need to investigate the world and be curious about it. The second one, we need to recognize multiple perspectives. The third one, we need to communicate across difference. And the fourth one, we need to take action. So I'm going to talk about each one of those just a little bit. The first one is investigate the world. I saw this yesterday with you, I think, or with someone who used this slide. It's beautiful. So what we and what our students need to do is have a curiosity and interest in understanding the world, to looking beyond our local community. We need to actively investigate. So when I'm teaching at Rutgers University this semester, for example, I have a class called Language and Culture for future teachers. I tell them that they're required to listen to the global news because they're going to have a quiz on that in the semester. They're required to learn world geography because right now, for example, we hear a lot about what's happening in Syria. Do you know where Syria is? Could you find it on the map? So they have to learn the world, they have to listen to the news, and then they have to look in our local community to see where the world and the local are intersecting. One of the assignments that I have them do is called a linguistic landscape. And they have to take pictures or collect in some way the rich global linguistic landscape in our community. And while I was here in Durango, I was thinking about that. I was in Walmart yesterday or the day before, buying some delicious bread for a meal that we had. And standing in front of me in line were some people who were speaking another language. Which language do you think I heard in Walmart? I heard Spanish, sure, but what other languages? I didn't hear Chinese, but I could, maybe some Russian. I actually heard German. And there was a Mennonite family standing in front of me and they were speaking German. So I have my students listen and look and document what is going on in the local community where the global is right here. That's what I mean about investigating the world. Then we also need to recognize the multiple perspectives that other people have and know that everybody doesn't think the same way that we do. So in my class, one of the things that we do is read fiction. We read books about people who come from other parts of the world, people who go and travel to other parts of the world. You can do it with watching movies too. We want to see that we all don't think or act the same way. We need to learn that we have different beliefs. And we need to be able to communicate across that difference. And as language teachers, that's really our job. We're always teaching our students how to communicate across difference. And that could be with language, that could be with body language, that could be in many different ways. Even now, we need to have the social media literacy to communicate across difference and with people who are different than we. And then most importantly, and this sometimes gets forgotten, is taking action. We teach language, but we don't think about how to apply and use that language to make a difference in the world. And we want them to be able to ethically take action, to be able to think critically and make strong decisions. So in one of the presentations yesterday, we were asked, do we believe that as language teachers, learning a new language will help our students transform the world? I also really believe that. We want our students to take action in their lives and in the world and make a difference. And remember the definition, to act on issues of global significance. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means. So, does this look familiar to you? Do you know, have you seen these shoes before? Anybody know what they're called? Toms, right? These are Tom's shoes. And I don't know, they're popular. People still wear them, but a few years ago, they were very, 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 very popular. Everybody wore these shoes. And do you know what the special thing is about these shoes? I hear someone say yes. What was the special thing about this shoes? Exactly. They donate. So the company, Tom's, if you buy a pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes in a community where people need shoes. And I thought, what a wonderful thing, right? So if you create your company, your business, and you think about, I want to do something to give back, right? So I wonder why they made that decision, this company. Buy one and give one. At my house, I got a magazine, a catalog. That's where this picture came from. I took a picture of it. And when it came to my house, in the middle of the catalog, they were advertising their shoes, but this picture and another was in the middle of it. And they said, we want to give some of our real estate. What they meant, though, was the money that they paid for the catalog. They said, we want to give it to companies that are doing amazing things. So this one, this is, I think, a sister and brother. The last name is Black. They have a jewelry company called Half United. And when they make money by selling their jewelry, they send and give some of the money to pack lunches for children who don't have them. So they made that decision with their company. And then this next one is a guy, I think his last name's Harrison, who has a company called Charity Water. If you purchase one of his bikes, they help people who are without potable water. But what I thought was interesting is, why did Harrison, Black, Tom's company, why did they decide that when they were going to, create a business, have a career, they were going to take action and try to act on issues of global significance? Why do you think they did? That made me think of a story that someone told me. I work often with Chinese teachers, and I was at a conference once with teachers of Chinese and Arabic and Swahili and Korean and Russian. And I was sitting next to a man, probably my age, who speaks Arabic. And like me, he grew up as an English speaker. I grew up as a monolingual English speaker. I learned Spanish. He learned Arabic. And I said, that's interesting that you learned Arabic. Why did you learn Arabic? And he said, well, I'll tell you a story. He said, when I was a little boy, my parents put us in the station wagon and said, we're going on a trip. And they drove down into Mexico from the United States. And he said, we went on a trip for a couple of weeks. I was sitting in the back seat of the car. I was looking out the window. And he said, everything I saw, everything I heard, it changed me. It changed me. And when I came back, I was hooked. I wanted to learn languages. I wanted to learn culture. And he said, but you know what's really interesting? He said, my brother was in the back seat too, looking out the other window. And he said, my brother didn't learn languages, didn't learn cultures. It didn't change him. So that really made me think a lot for us as teachers, because what can we do to our students so that when they have the experience, they're not going to get in a station wagon with us and go for a trip, but they do come into our classrooms and they're with us for a semester or a year. We've got that time with them. We want them to leave hooked on lifelong learning for global competence. That's our chance. And I take this really seriously. I think that if I have a student come into my class for 50 minutes or for 2 hours, when they leave, their brain and their soul and their body should be changed. Or why come to my class, right? So when they come into your class, you need to think about, what can I give them in this time to get them hooked on language, hooked on culture, wanting to become interculturally competent, globally competent. And this was just this story. Someone's looking out one window, someone's looking out the other window. But as teachers, our job is to make those things happen. So, are you a global citizen? Do you think you are? I bet that everybody who's here at ETC is a global citizen. You're somebody who is on a journey, right? You're crossing linguistic and cultural borders. You're on your way. What I would say is all of us are on this journey. Probably no one has really arrived exactly, but we're on our way to becoming globally competent. And yesterday I heard a talk from one of the students from the UHED who went to Korea, Oscar. I don't think he's in the room here now. Ah, you're here? Are you back there? Or you went to Korea? Yes? Wonderful. And he was talking about this model for becoming interculturally sensitive. And we are all trying to become more interculturally sensitive, but it's a lifelong process. Same thing with global competence. We're on the journey together. But I wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to give an example for us to think about the global in our lives and what it means and how we're growing and what we need to think about for the future. All right? So I have a picture here of somebody who is very special to me. This is Viviana, and she is teaching first grade. She's in her classroom teaching first grade, and she teaches here in Durango. And I asked her to send me a picture because I think she is, like many of us, a developing global citizen. She grew up speaking Spanish, but she learned English. She learned French. She went to France for 1 year to work as a nanny, and so she had that experience living outside of Durango. And now she's teaching here these little first graders. Her father lives in the United States. She said in the first grade classroom, several of the fathers and uncles live in the United States. That's a very global experience, right? To know that some of your family is outside the country. And then I even said to her, well, how do you think the global impacts you on a daily basis? And we were joking, and she looked at the jeans she was wearing. They're from Pakistan. She looked at the makeup that was on her face. It's from France. This morning when I was getting dressed, I looked at my clothes. This jacket, let's see, the jacket is from Vietnam. The shirt was from the Philippines, and the pants were made in Jordan. And I'm not going to ask you to look right now, but I bet if you check what you use on a daily basis, what's on your body, where did it come from in this world? We never think about that, do we? And who, created it? Who put it together? Who exported it? Who brought it here to us? There is a global process going on all around us all the time, and we don't think about it. And we want to help our students think about that and realize that they're part of this emerging world community and that they are going to make a difference. I put these numbers up here to remind me that I wanted to say something. So 2028, 2032, 2034, 2037, those are years. And if you look at these little first graders there, what's going to happen to them in 2028? Any ideas what might happen to them in 2028? Exactly. They're going to be growing up, and they're going to be in charge. In 2028, those first graders are going to be graduating from high school, I think, if I did the math right. In 2032, they might have their licenciatura. In 2034, maybe a maestría, maybe they'll go on for a doctorado. That would be a really fast doctorado. It usually takes much longer time. But my point is that these little kids are going to be going out into the workforce in 2030, 32, 34, 37. What's the world going to be like then? What about the issues of global significance, right? Look at the faces we're making, like, what's the world going to be like them? We have to prepare these kids so well, right? They need to be prepared to help this world be a better place. So that's what I'm here to urge us all to do today. So this is a great tool too. Another good thing for you to have in your toolkit if you're convinced that you want to be teaching for global competence. I use a lot of resources from the United Nations. And I'm very lucky because we live in New Jersey. I can take the train and go to the United Nations in about an hour, hour and a half from my house. And sometimes we take the students there on a little field trip. And when we go to the United Nations, we're actually leaving the United States. You can get your passport stamped at the United Nations because it's not the United States, it's not any nation, it's all of ours. But the nice thing for language teachers is all the materials at the United Nations is translated into one of their 6 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, French, Russian, and Arabic. So if you want to use authentic materials, and if you want to use things that will get them thinking about issues of global significance, go to the United Nations website. I don't know if you're familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations has come up with what are the issues of global significance. So you don't have to do the work to figure out what they are. There are committees working on this. These Sustainable Development Goals were just created because there were goals before that called the Millennium Development Goals. They went through 2015. And we did some very good work as a world community, but we didn't solve all the problems. We all know that. And they came up with these 17 new goals. So you can see number 1, no poverty. We don't want hunger. We want to have good health and well-being for everyone, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. I won't read all of them, but they're all important things, right? And we know that none of these issues can be solved by one person, one community, or one nation. We all have to be working together. So we need to prepare those little first graders or middle schoolers or high school kids in your class to handle these issues, right? I'm going to show you a little video here. I think when I click, it's going to start, so I'll prepare you for it. It's a little video that the United Nations created to teach about the Sustainable Development Goals. But they have tons of good resources at their site. You could, surf around and find things, but I think they'll be very nice for you to use in your language classrooms. So let's see if it'll start playing.
Imagine you're traveling in space.
You've been traveling for a while because space is very, spacious. And then you see it. Earth. A tiny island in space. A little speck of water, rock and soil, with a thin veil of air that we can breathe. There might be life out there in space, but here on Earth, it's everywhere. If you think about it, we all need the same basic things. Fresh water, clean air, and healthy food. The good news is that Earth has enough of those for all of us. The bad news is that we've got a few problems in the way. The first is climate change. The way we're living on Earth now is damaging the very things we need to live. The fuels we burn are choking the atmosphere. We're running out of clean drinking water. And all of this is changing the weather. The second problem is inequality. Some people on Earth have far more than they need, and most people don't have nearly enough. This can lead to poverty, and that's not fair. Millions of people are unable to get medicine that could stop them from getting sick, or cure them if they do. In some places, children complain about having to go to school. In others, millions of children can't go to school at all. Is that fair? Luckily, we have a plan. The United Nations just announced the Global Goals for Sustainable Development. These are 17 goals to protect the planet against climate change and make the world safer, fairer, and more just for everyone. We have to achieve these goals by 2030. The great thing about having a plan is that we can check how we're doing along the way, give ourselves a pat on the back if we do well, and try harder if not. 2030 isn't so long away, so we'll need to encourage each other with lots of ideas. We can start by making these goals famous. There are 17 goals altogether, so lots of different ways in which you can help. What if being a girl or a boy makes no difference to how safe you feel, the friends you have, or the places you could go? What if we found new ways to make water clean and drinkable? What if we could recycle all of our waste? What else do you think we could do? We all live on Earth, and we depend on the Earth to live. We have many different cultures. We only have one planet. If we take care of it, and each other, and share what we produce fairly and sustainably, everything we need is right here. Someday we may find intelligent life on other planets.
In the meantime, let's see how intelligent we can make it down here for all of us. At home, on Earth.
The same.
Okay, so nice little video to use in class to get the students excited, to introduce them to what the Sustainable Development Goals are, and there's so many things you could do with that. We always learn in language teaching about teaching through content, right? And using authentic materials, perfect way to do that, and to give the students a sense of purpose. So, how can we develop global competences in your classrooms? I'm hoping I could give you some ideas today that you can take and use in your classroom. I'm giving them from my context from where I work in the United States, so you may need to adapt and change them, but I was hoping that it would start some brainstorming for you for some things that you could do. But to me, there are two things that have to happen, two big things. If we want to develop global competence for our students, we need to plan for it, right? But how can we plan for it if we're not thinking a lot ourselves about our own global competence as a teacher? We need to be the role models for our students. So we need to think about our own professional development. And here's some things. We need to get familiar with what's going on in the world, the issues, just even where things are in the world. We need to keep our eyes open for the connections with the global in our life. We need to read, watch, listen, learn about others, engage with communities and with people who are diverse, different than we are. We can get active to develop these SDGs, and we need to plan curriculum that directly builds it and be role models for our students. And these are common things. We always want to be role models for our students, and we always create curriculum. But if we want the curriculum to develop global competence, we need to plan for that specifically. Just like we've talked about, if you want to teach culture, you have to plan for it. You have to assess it, right? We know all of this. So if you want to include global competence, you have to plan for it. So I want to give you an example of something that we did in one of the communities I work in. We had a program between my university and Highland Park Middle School, and it was a Mandarin program. So it was for high school students, but they were novices. So they had well, that's not true. We had different levels. I'm going to talk about the novice level today. But we had some had no Mandarin, we had some who studied a little bit of Mandarin, and we had some who spoke Mandarin at home. But I'm talking about the novices, because I want you to see how you could do this with any level student that you have. So we created a thematic unit curriculum called Global New Jersey. And the idea was that the students in our community would get familiar with the global connections right there in the community. So I want to tell you about the curriculum. It's focused on stories of global migration. I'm going to ask you about how you think this would develop global competence and even linguistic competence as well. Like any good teacher, when you are planning, you have to think in the beginning what you want to happen at the end, right? Backwards design. So we wanted to promote global competence. The idea was to get the students interested in knowing people who are different than they are, giving them skills to interact with new people, celebrate languages in the community, see the connections, see the multiple identities we all have, and have an action project. So our action project had to do with welcoming newcomers to the community. In our community, our high school decided to have some exchange students from China. And I don't know if that's happened here yet. I imagine that may happen here in Durango. And we thought it would be really good to prepare the students to welcome the students from China. So we created a curriculum focused on what students could do with the Mandarin, 3 modes of communication. In the United States, we are guided by the ACTFL, American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages standards, and they say that we have to do intrapersonal, interpersonal, and presentational opportunities, and those cover the 4 skills, and provide a performance assessment. So we created Meiling's story, and I'm going to tell that story to you now. And I'd like you to think about what you think the key forms and functions are that the students were learning. This was in Mandarin. I translated it into English to tell it to you now. But just think, if this was to a novice, beginner English student, what would be the forms and the functions? So the forms, like the vocabulary that they'd be learning, the phrases, and the functions, what kind of grammar, things they can do with language. And this was to begin the lesson. We always want to make sure that it's 100% or as much as we can in the target language. So using stories is an excellent way to do that. So are you ready to hear Meiling's story? I think I'm going to stand here because it might be a little easier. So this is Meiling with her father and her mother. They're from China. They live in Highland Park. Meiling goes to school. Meiling isn't happy. She doesn't have any friends. Meiling speaks Chinese. She doesn't speak English. Ni hao. She doesn't speak English. Hello, I'm Pablo. Ni hao, wo shi zhongwen. Meiling is from China. Meiling said, I speak Chinese. Do you speak Chinese? Wo shu zhongwen. Ni shou zhongwen ma? I don't speak Chinese, I'm just trying here. Pablo said, I speak English, Spanish, and a little Chinese. Hello, hola, ni hao. I'm from Mexico. Pablo is from Mexico. Meiling saw Ravi. Ravi said, I'm Ravi, I'm from India. I'm Pablo's friend. I'm from India. So you see, Ravi is from India. Ravi said, I speak Hindi, English, and a little Chinese. Ni hao, Meiling saw Rebecca. Meiling said, Ni hao, wo shou Meiling. Ni shou zhongwen ma? Rebecca said, I speak English and French. I do not speak Chinese. Ravi and Pablo are my friends. Ravi said, Rebecca's from Canada. Meiling was happy. She went home and said to her mother, I have 3 friends. There's Pablo, who speaks English, Spanish, and Chinese. There's Ravi, who speaks Hindi, English, and Chinese. And there's Rebecca. She speaks English and French, but she doesn't speak Chinese. Meiling is very happy. She has 3 friends. Simple little story to introduce Meiling and her family and her situation, right? We followed up this story with another one, which was Meiling exploring. So we told this story, the one you just saw, worked with that language with the students, and then maybe in the next class or 2 days later, we told this other story. So I'm going to tell the next story, but then I'm going to ask you, what were the forms that the students were learning? What were the functions that the students were learning? And what were they learning about global competence? Okay? So you're going to listen for the forms, the functions, and the global competence. So here's the second story, Meiling explores. So this is Meiling, this is Pablo, this is Ravi. They live in Highland Park. Meiling asked, where's the library? Here's the library. Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? I'm sorry, said the library. I don't speak Chinese. I speak English and German. Guten Tag. Meiling asked, where's the restaurant? Here's the restaurant. Meiling asked, Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? The waitress said, I'm sorry, I do not speak Chinese. I speak English and Spanish. So she said, hola. Where is the flower store? Here's the flower store. Meiling asked, Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? The man in the flower show said, I'm sorry, I do not speak Chinese. I speak English and Korean. Korean speaker in the back, how do you say hello? Annyeonghaseyo, something like that, right? Where is the grocery store? Here's the grocery store. Meiling said, Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? She said, I'm sorry, I do not speak Chinese. I speak English and Russian. Do you know how to say hello in Russian? Driven? Privet. Thank you. Where is the bakery? Here's the bakery. Meiling said, Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? I'm sorry, said the baker. I do not speak Chinese. I speak English and Tagalog. ¿Cómo está? Interesting, very like Spanish, right? ¿Cómo está? Where is the Chinese restaurant? Here is the Chinese restaurant. Hello, do you speak Chinese? Ni hao, ni shou zhongwen ma? Ni hao. I speak Chinese and English. Meiling is happy. Welcome to New Jersey. Welcome to Highland Park. This is Pablo. He's my friend. Pablo speaks Spanish and a little Chinese. Ni hao. This is Ravi. He's my friend. Ravi speaks Hindi and a little Chinese. We all speak Chinese. We all speak English too. Everyone is happy. Simple little story. So, with these two stories, what were we teaching for linguistic competence? What were some of the forms that we were teaching? Where is, right? So asking questions, that would be a function, right? Where is, and greetings, that would be a function, how to say hello. What about the forms, the vocabulary? Locations, library, store, restaurant. Nationalities, languages, countries. Lots and lots and lots of information, right? What happens sometimes? We say, oh, here's a list. Spanish, English, Chinese, German, and then I say, do you speak Chinese? Do you speak Chinese? It's very boring. It's not natural language at all. And the story takes it and puts it in a wonderful context, right? Very rich, but very, very beginning language. Very simple language. In fact, I have a video in a minute that I'll show you of the beginning Mandarin speakers who were in a summer program for 2 weeks and what they were able to produce after this. So that's the linguistic competence. What about the global competence skills here? What do you think they were learning in terms of global competence?
There are people from many different places in a community.
Exactly. People from many different places in a community, which could link to the multiple perspectives. And also that you can communicate across difference, right? That you learn a new language so that you can communicate with other people. What about taking action? In a way, we're not talking about any big issue of global significance, and we did this lesson last year, but now I feel like this lesson is more important than ever for kids in the United States to be welcoming kids from other countries with the kind of language that the President of the United States is using today. The kids need to be welcoming people, to be saying, hey, I want to be your friend. And we're all happy together. So to me, that's a really big lesson about global competence. So we began with these stories, and we just answered these questions. What was the linguistic and global competence targets? I hope you can see how I believe that stories engage us. We want to hear those stories. We get involved. They put the language in those meaningful contexts. We can teach about content, we can teach thematically, we don't just have worksheets, isolated, decontextualized language, and they teach for global competence. I think they get us interested in the world. I think they offer multiple perspectives, they provide language forms and functions, and they could lead us to taking action. And they even give us models of how to do that. There are many different kinds of stories you can use in your class. The easiest kind, I think, are these created stories. That story about Meiling, we just created it. We had fun with it. With all the things that you can do with photoshopping, right? Using the drawn pictures of Meiling. I had a friend help me, and I think it's my next slide. Look at this one. You see where I am? Standing in front of the plaza, right? We also did other stories, like maybe you could say, where am I? I'm in Durango. Then maybe you put me in front of the Eiffel Tower. Then maybe you put me on the Great Wall of China, and your students are learning. We did it actually with Ravi, Pablo, and Meiling. Where are they? Oh, they're here. They're in China. Oh, now they're in Europe. So you can do such exciting things with stories. And if you feel like some of the teachers who are my age and maybe not as comfortable with technology, the students themselves will create these stories like that if you give them the chance to do it. Or you can do it the low-tech way and just do it on paper with a book. So have them create the stories. Then you can do folk tales. We have a storytelling event that we do every year at the university, and when we tell the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears in the United States and New Jersey, we actually change it. And instead of Goldilocks, it's Maria, and she is in Yucatan, so she doesn't go home to the cottage, she goes home to the choza, and they're instead of the three bears, they're the tres venaditos, so that we can change that story so that while the kids are learning a story that they know in the United States, they're actually thinking about another world, a different way, that a different culture. So you can change folk tales and make them global. Or you can use children's literature. And there's so many good books out there that you can use. And I'm sure you've seen the books that I have up here on the table. This one is called Dim Sum for Everyone. This book is by Grace Lin, who is a wonderful Taiwanese-American author. And she has written this book about dim sum. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. Has anyone heard of it before? In Chinese, it means like little heart, or like a little gift of a heart. But what dim sum is a way of eating where you sit at a table with your family, and the waiters and the waitresses have food on a little cart. And they will walk around with the little cart, and you can point and choose like a little snack that you want to eat at your table. And this story is very simple because it says what the father's favorite food is, what the mother's favorite food is, what the children's favorite food is. But how cool if you're teaching mother, father, family language, and you're teaching I like or I don't like, but set the story in another culture, right? Because they're getting more than just the language. I'm going to show you a few of these books that I have here because what I want to be able to do before you leave today is raffle them off to you, okay? So I know we have Schumer and Lali and Ricardo who are going to be helping me. While I'm talking, they're going to give you a number. So hold on to your number. At the end of my talk, then I'll say dim sum number 54, and then it will be for 54. You see what I mean? So I have this book, Dim Sum for Everyone, 2 copies of this book. Grace Lin also wrote this book called Bringing in the New Year. Now this book is about Chinese New Year and everything a Chinese family does to prepare for the new year. So we talk about holidays, we talk about special traditions. Why not bring in one from the target culture, but then maybe one from this Taiwanese American family too? It's another nice book. The next picture, I think, is this one, the Great Kapok Tree. I think kapok trees in Spanish is ceiba. Do you know that tree? Ceiba? Ceiba. So this big, huge tree, many of them are in the southern part of Mexico. The Mayans have a lot of beliefs about how very sacred and special these trees are. But we know that we're having trouble with the rainforest and with the environment, right? And this is a just beautiful book about how we need to protect the environment and the rainforest. So again, you could use a story like this to get your students thinking about issues of global significance. And then I just found this book that I thought was really cool. This book is called The Same Moment Around the World. And you see this picture here? It's the world, and it's got little kids here around the world. So it might talk about this kid at 8 o'clock in the morning who's waking up in, I don't know, I have to open the book to know the times, but maybe he's somewhere in Europe, and he's getting ready to go to school. And then there's another little boy down here at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's the same time. 6 a.m. there is the same as 8 there. And he's waking up and helping his father bring in the fish that they caught overnight. And then I know there's something in Mexico about Pablo. He's sleeping and he's dreaming. And so the book is really neat, and it's got a wonderful world map here. And the world map has pictures of the kids, and it draws down to the time, to the place in the world, and the different times. The reason I opened that up too is you don't need the book. You could have your students do the same thing. You could give them a map of the world, tell them choose 5 different time zones, create 5 characters, and imagine what they're doing. Are they sleeping? Are they waking? Are they eating? Do you remember the first time you understood that if we're here and it's light out, somewhere in the world it's dark? Such an important, big lesson for kids to get a sense of the world and how we're all put together. So it's another way to get them thinking about the globe and the world that they live in. And then this book, I don't know if you've heard about this one, it's called Material World. This book is beautiful, and it has, I don't have a picture of it for up there, but it's a photography book. The photographer went around the world and asked families to take everything that they own and put it outside their house. So you might be in Cuba, you might be in Mexico, the United States, and you see what the houses look like and what the people have. And so I have this book here too. And then, just for a few extra things, and to encourage you to travel, I have a little travel thing for your luggage. So I have some of those. So does everyone have a little tag? Good. What time is it now, please? What time is it? 6:27. All right, we're good. So at the very end, see, this is how I can keep you in this room. We'll do the lottery. So, okay. I wanted to say to you, storytelling is so important. Using these sort of books, using the stories, I hope you will do it because we really make connections with stories. But stories aren't enough. Stories help us with that interpretive mode. We're a listener, but you could also have your students tell the stories and do presentational mode. When we did Meiling's story, we had a whole unit. So that was just one little piece or 2 pieces. After that, we did the interpersonal mode. And because I live in a community where many people speak Chinese, we were able to get the students speaking with real speakers in the community. So while you're watching this, I want you to think about what maybe you could do too. So we invited in people from the community. The students were interviewing them. And you can't really see very well, but there's a grid there. And what we did as a class, every time they met someone who spoke a new language, we interviewed them and we wrote down the languages they speak. You can see they're doing it in characters in Mandarin too. We did this same lesson one time with little children, and they had their homework was, how many people can you find who speak other languages? And so then they would come back into the class and say, oh, I have an uncle who speaks Polish, or I know somebody who speaks this language, and they kept a tally in their classroom to celebrate the language. So they were interviewing community members. Here's somebody who brought our Chinese lunch, and they interviewed him, and we were so lucky. He had 11 brothers and sisters, so there was a lot to talk about with him. And then we went into the community and interviewed people. This is a beauty salon, place where people get their hair done, but we went in and we had them interview them too. Then we went for lunch at a Chinese restaurant. We were very fortunate to be able to do this because we had a grant from the government that gave us some funds that we could do this with. But we also Skyped. We had the students Skype with people who were in Beijing, who were in Hong Kong, and other places. So you can always connect your learners with real people if there aren't enough here in the local community via Skype. And at the end, I'm going to put my email address here. If you'd like your class to be able to Skype with another class or other students, I have a lot of connections, teachers, and we could put them in touch with you, because they would love that. Skype call with the students, right? So we did that, and then here we are eating. And then it's kind of hard to tell, but on that map, Each little pink and yellow tag was someone they met in the community from somewhere in the world. So we wanted them thinking, where are you meeting people from? And then we asked these groups to make videos. Remember how I said in that school they were getting kids from China? So we had them do a video welcoming the kids from China. So the students did it on their own. The video I'm going to show you is in Mandarin. I don't know if I'll show you the whole thing, but you could watch it and see the students introducing themselves. What they did was they introduced themselves, they said what languages they speak. Somebody was speaking French, Hebrew, Polish, Spanish, and then they showed our community to the new students. So I'll show you a little bit of the video. Oh, sorry. This is the video project. Oh, I think you're gonna have to... So they said, welcome to our school.
我住在高原镇，我说英文和法文。Bonjour.
Okay, so I speak English and French. Bonjour.
我住在高原镇，我说英文、西班牙文和菲律宾文。
And she's from the Philippines, so she speaks
我住
Tagalog.
在高原镇，我可以说英文和我广东话。喂，我是 Rachel， 我住在高原镇，我说英文、法文和希伯来文。Shalom。
你好，我是 Alice， 我住在高原镇，我说英文和俄文。Привет。
你好，我是 Marissa， 我住在 Piscataway， 我说英文。Hello，
我是 Diana， 我住在 Franklin， 我说英文和西班牙文。Hola。
So that last woman spoke English and Spanish. And here they're introducing the library.
图书馆有很多活动。
The grocery store.
这是最喜欢赢的超市。
这是一
So they're introducing the places in the community, telling if they like the food there or not, things like that. And I'm just going to show you the end for a second because... Because they introduced themselves, they talked about the community, and then they just did goofy, crazy things, which they loved because they were creating with the video. But they had so much fun, and not all the students wanted to be in this summer camp. I know that some of them were there because their parents made them join the camp. And what we found is when we gave them the license to be creative, they really did this. There were a few students there. We had 3 groups. We thought maybe they weren't going to do it, but they enjoyed it. So this was our final assessment, the performance assessment for the students to show us that they learned how to introduce themselves, talk about what languages they speak, present places in their town. So that was the full unit that we did. This high school where we did the project has a few special things that I just wanted to tell you about, because if you're a teacher, maybe you're a principal, or maybe you're a coordinator of languages, you could do something bigger. You could do something in your own class, but you could also do things that are school-wide. And in this school, they have a global citizenship program, and you can see I'm there the day of graduation. When the students got their diploma, they also got a certificate that said, I am working on being a global citizen. So when they go to the university, they can show that they got the certificate. They had to do projects to prove that they were working on global citizenship, but how exciting for them too. They have the first line is the Global Citizenship Program. The second one is the Model United Nations Program. You can have a mini United Nations program in your school. And I've heard that that's getting more popular in Mexico now, so you might want to think about bringing that to your school. One of the teachers created his own programs called Invisible Issues, looking at those things like poverty or gender equality and how are people being discriminated against or not having their human rights protected, and creating programs. And then that school has a sister school relationship in Yucatan, Mexico. And this is another thing that each of you could do. If you wanted a sister school where you're sending, what they do is do Skype calls, or they send videos back and forth to have real communication. Right now, we're only doing introductions, telling each other about the schools. But ideally, they should begin working on some of those issues of global significance together. This is a video.
Bienvenidos a Highland Park.
Sorry about the sound.
Hola, me llamo Lía, tengo 17 años y estoy en el grado 12.
Hola, me llamo William John. Tengo 16 años y estoy en el grado 12.
Hola, me llamo Angelina. Tengo 16 años y voy a entrar el segundo año de prepa.
Hola, me llamo Max. Estoy en el grado y 14 años.
Highland Park tiene muchas culturas y idiomas. Tenemos personas que hablan inglés, español, chino, francés, hebreo, hindú, italiano, árabe.
So this video was made by the kids in the high school in the United States to send to the school in Yucatan. And they introduced themselves, they talked about their community, and then they asked questions. And then that video went to the school in Yucatan. They made a video to send back. I'll just show you a minute of it too, where they were answering 2 questions. One was, what's your favorite subject? And the other one was, what's the Day of the Dead? Tell us about the Day of the Dead. So here's how they answered.
Hi, we are Wabig High School in Mérida, Mexico.
Hello, my name is Carla. It is my school, Wabig.
We like math. I like mathematics, algebras, because it's important in my life.
Because it's practical.
I like calculus because it's difficult and interesting.
Because it's easy.
Because it's fun.
So you get the idea. They're sending that back and forth. And just last week, we went to deliver this video to the students, and it's just wonderful to watch. You know, I don't know how it is in Mexico. In the United States, the high school students always need to look very cool. They're always cool. They don't show a lot of reactions. And these videos got their full attention, and they really wanted to participate. So that was very nice. And the English teachers told us, I don't know if they can do it. I don't know if they have enough English. I'm not sure. And their kids did so much. Also, the students wrote letters that we took and delivered to the high school students too. And now the ones in the United States are writing letters back to them. So this gets them interested in investigating the world. It gets them thinking that English is something that they can use and communicating across difference. So I was hoping, while we're here today, you could think about which of these ideas you might adapt or use in your own teaching. Hopefully you came up with some ideas. Before we do the raffle, I just want to share a few last ideas, and then we'll do the raffle. So, this was one other thing with stories. We do a lot of storytelling events where we tell stories at special occasions to celebrate and make multilingualism visible in the communities. Because we are language teachers, but everybody else isn't as excited about languages as we are, so we want them to hear English, to see Mandarin, to see the sign language and other things. So I've been doing some of these events, and I thought I'd show you an example for something we did down in Yucatan too, because we had workshops for teachers who wanted to learn about how to do storytelling in the classroom. So I was there in 2012, and I was there in 2014 teaching the teachers. But then we took the stories, and I know that they have like a Feria de Libros here in Durango and other parts too. So the Filé is their Feria de Libros, and we brought the stories to the Feria to the children. So they heard stories in Mandarin, in Spanish, and there was a sign language interpreter too. So the kids would get excited about hearing the languages from very, very young to become, multilingual. Here it is. Another time, they also decided to include Mayan. It would be neat to include stories in Tepehuan here. So it's a great way to get it into the community. Then those English teachers took the stories to a primaria and went and told the kids those same stories. So here they are doing it in some schools, here they are doing it in the afternoon, I think. So that's great. Also, my students created lessons, big curriculums on issues. So look at the first one, they had a curriculum, the journey of your clothes to your closet. You know how we talked about where all our clothes come from? You could do a whole unit on that with your students. Or somebody else did it on the history of women's rights, using the he for she action kits that are out there, looking at issues of child labor and having students support children, and then the sustainable future focus. So these are just possible topics for units. This was a really cool project that happened in New Jersey too, at another university. They actually were learning Hindi and Urdu, but the kids did a lesson where they were communicating via Skype with kids in India and in Pakistan, looking at issues of water access and safety and sustainability. And their action project was creating a blog for awareness, but then they got on the radio, one of the biggest radio stations that's a Hindi-speaking radio station, and presented their work. So finding authentic places where the students can present is really important. And to sum it up, I guess I want you to think about how you can make these kind of connections out of the classroom with storytelling events, global events. I wanted to come back to, and this is a service learning project we do in our community called the Conversation Tree. So we bring the language learning out to the community. You already are doing probably one of the most important things to become globally competent, which is surrounding yourself with people who are learning and lifelong learners like you are, and being here. Last year was really nice when Stephen Krashen was here 2 years ago. We have a conference focused only on global issues, global education at my university in New Jersey. If you wanted to come join us, it's at the end of April, but it would be next year too if you wanted to think about doing something like that. But look for global education conferences if this is something that seems important for you. And I put this here because this is to remind me to tell you, to become globally competent, I believe that we need what I always call sandpaper people. So sandpaper is liha, I think, right? How do you say it? Yeah, so I believe that in our life, we need people who are like sandpaper. Because I also think there are other people who are like vanilla pudding, sugary, sweet. They're very nice to be with and fun to be around, but they don't make us think. And people who are like sandpaper in our life, maybe they tell us we need to think differently, maybe they challenge us, maybe they say, you need to open your eyes more, or you're not doing this maybe the best way. I think at conferences we have to really listen and try to do that. But my point is, I think we need to look for people like that to help us grow with our global competence. You know how I began talking about Tom's shoes? There's somebody important in my life, another language teacher, who said to me, but I've heard about those Tom's shoes, and I've actually heard that when they give the shoes to people in the communities, then the local shoemakers go out of business, that it actually causes some other problems. And so I put it here because I think we need to be thinking about how to ethically take action, to be thinking critically, to plan intentionally, but be open for growth, and to know that this is a lifelong learning process. So I think on that, I wanted to end and say thank you.
Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and all the material that you brought to us. Thank you for being here. On the name of Dr. Jose Rosas Espuro, the governor, Escuela de Lenguas, and ETC 2017, we would like to give you a small prize.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.